Welcome to another edition of Journey of Hope. Real stories of people in their journey of life. Thrilling stories of overcoming diseases and cancer. Our special guests today are Patty Jo and Terry DMin from Phoenix, Arizona. And they got an amazing story of how God intervened in their life, how they overcame cancer and many other obstacles. Terry and Patty Jo, it's good to have you here. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from?
We're from the Phoenix area.
Okay. Where were you born and raised?
I was actually born here in Southern California in Santa Monica at UCLA, actually.
Okay.
And when I was 8, we moved to the Seattle area. And I basically grew up there, finished high school there, joined the military from there, and basically was there till I was about 19.
And then what happened?
At that point, my dad got a job in Phoenix, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I had moved back home after the Navy.
So you put some time in the Navy and moved back home?
I did. And so they moved to Phoenix. I stayed in the Seattle area until their house sold, and didn't really know what I wanted to do for a career, since I had planned on a career in the Navy. Followed him to Phoenix, and went to school with the intention of completing a 4-year degree in information technology. I met someone at the time. I ended up marrying and I finished an associate's degree and got married and had 2 beautiful daughters.
Okay.
And
marriage didn't work out.
Didn't work out.
Yeah, after 12, 13, 14 years.
13 years, yes. And that within a year, actually, of the failure of my marriage, I met Patty Jo.
Okay.
And I'm convinced God brought us together.
Kind of an answer to prayer there, wasn't it?
She was.
All right, Patty Jo, where are you from?
I'm from Central California.
Okay.
I lived there my whole life, went to college there, and then I moved to Phoenix in '83.
And then you got married and had a family. And, and what is your background? You've been involved in real estate for quite a few years.
I am, yes.
Okay, and still are.
Still are.
All right, all right. And you were telling me about some of the health challenges that you had that I found quite fascinating, and you kind of went on a self-discovery. So tell us what was happening.
My weight had ballooned up. His sister had health issues. She moved in with us, and I was taking care of her, and I had gained quite a few pounds over the years.
Okay.
Nothing
happens quickly. It's
No.
gradually over a period of time.
It did.
Okay.
So I got up to actually 215, and I'm not that tall. And I had a lot of problems with indigestion, heartburn. Nothing worked as far as like Prilosec, those kinds of things. Nexium, Acifex worked. But those proton pump inhibitors are very bad for your body. They draw the calcium out of your bones, and that's why they come in 2-week packages like Prilosec. You're not supposed to be on those, but people take those for months and years. They're not good for you. I wanted to get off of those, and when I started trying to get off of those, your stomach actually goes into like a hyper mode, produces more acid, and you're feeling even worse. So I did a lot of research on the internet to find out how to get off of those, and it's to eat an alkaline diet. And I printed out a chart that had all the alkaline foods.
Kind of give us some guidance.
Right. Put it on my refrigerator, used that, did some apple cider vinegar, started eating healthy, cut the pills down to, half a pill, wean myself off of those, and I felt incredible.
So this is all self-discovery.
It was.
I mean, all on your own.
Learning about nutrition.
Reading about nutrition.
Reading about nutrition. And so I did that.
Were you doing any exercise at this point?
No.
You weren't.
And then I decided, well, I'm feeling so much better, and I started noticing by eating these foods I was feeling better. So I thought, well, I'm going to cut out the cereals, because I loved cereal. I could eat.
He told me you could eat it 3 times a day.
I could easily eat a box of cereal. Didn't matter what kind of cereal, I could eat a box. And so when I cut out the cereals, I found out I wasn't doing milk anymore. And I felt so good. And I noticed if I did do milks, cheeses, things like that, it still wasn't feeling good. So I cut out the dairy.
You began limiting dairy products then.
And then I started cutting out, slowly, a work in process. And then I would cut out the sugars and the whites, the white potatoes, things like that. And I dropped 65 pounds. I've kept it off. No exercise. I need to start exercising because I
So we're talking about over a year, year and a half that this has been going on. Okay, or longer than that. Yeah, longer than that.
Yeah, I started in 2000 and about 2000, I think, is when I started doing this.
Oh, all right. So we're talking about several years
So,
then, yeah.
yes.
And you maintained it and
And
kept
I've
it off. That's
maintained
right.
it, and
So when you started getting on, I'm not going to
much
call
more
it a health
energy.
kick, but pardon?
much more energy, feel
A lot more energy?
better. No medications.
And you got rid of the medications.
My blood pressure went down. I wasn't on medication for it, but it had gone up, probably from my weight. Cholesterol levels, everything is perfect.
Wow. So was he pretty excited about all of the changes that you were making?
No.
He wasn't. I can't believe that.
He did not make those changes
He
right
didn't
away.
make them, so you were kind of on your soloing. Well, now you had some unique health challenges. So tell us where they started.
They really started in late adolescence, early teen.
Okay. You had some depression.
I did. Well, to start, not that this was a cause of my depression, but I began my walk with Christ when I was 12 at a Billy
Okay.
Graham crusade. Again, not that that caused my depression.
Right, but you
it's
gave your
just,
heart to Jesus
I
when you
gave
were
my heart
12.
to Jesus at that point.
Okay.
I had already suffered some depression issues, but pretty much my entire teen and into my 40s,
Depression.
I fought with depression. Depression's been an issue in my family altogether.
You were on medications?
I was off and on.
Yeah.
Some years were worse than others. A couple of times I tried to take my own life. Fortunately, I wasn't successful. I don't think God was ready for me yet. At any rate, I was about, 2004, so I was 40. I tried to take my life again. I had a rough night. And that night I was actually taking a shower. And realization
down at the
hit
end,
me.
wit's
I
end.
couldn't go on like that any longer. So I actually hit my knees and asked God. It wasn't an ultimatum. I don't believe in an ultimatum
Sure.
when it comes to that. It was a request. I asked God, I said, can you either take this depression or take my life? Because I can't
Can't go on any longer.
go on any longer. So that was November of 2004. Along with the depression came night terrors, demonic dreams, dreams of elevators opening in hell, things like that.
Would you wake up in the night?
I wouldn't wake up. I would scream to be woken up.
Really?
I would actually scream for Patty to wake me up, help
Right.
me. That night,
In the shower?
in the shower, I prayed that prayer, and I have not suffered from depression, have not had night terrors.
Praise the
I
Lord.
get blue now and then, everybody does, but
From
the
that
actual
point on.
depression is gone.
What about the medications?
Medications I've never had to take any since.
My God is
So
good.
he definitely answered that
Yeah.
prayer.
He is
All
awesome.
right.
So
So that was one of the challenges you had along the way. Okay, then you had some more.
had a few. At the end of my marriage, my first marriage, there was a lot of stress, which,
Sure.
that's
Normal.
normal for that type of a situation. So at the time, I began having headaches. I thought they were stress related when
Sure.
they began, and it was
Normal
stressful
to
at
think
work.
that.
I work in IT. I do coding. It's stressful. So between the two, I figured they're just headaches. They'll go away. My day was work, come home, and fall asleep from a headache, and start all over again. It got worse. I started going to the doctor, and one of my eyes actually turned in, and although I could see through it, it did me no good because I was looking at the center of my
Actually,
face.
started turning in.
It actually turned in towards my nose, so I looked cross-eyed, and the doctors, they at one point thought I had a fast-growing tumor because there's been
There've been some
a
brain-
history of brain
yeah,
tumors in my
your-
family with my
yeah.
sister and my mother. And I kept going back to them, and they weren't really doing anything per se. And one night it got to the point where I just couldn't take the pain any longer. The pain, it was up my entire spine along with the headache. And I called the doctor crying in pain, and they sent me to the emergency room yet again, where finally someone in the emergency room had a thought about doing a spinal tap. And it turned out that the spinal fluid pressure was around 20 to 25 times greater than normal.
25 times higher than normal.
Right.
So this is what was causing the pain and the pressure and the headaches
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
everything else.
That's what caused the eye to turn. I had no peripheral vision at all. And so it turned out, fortunately, it wasn't a brain tumor.
Right.
It was what they call, at the time they called it pseudotumor cerebri, which is your body fighting off a perceived tumor that doesn't exist.
Wow.
I believe they call it something different now.
Yeah.
But they put me on medications, Diamox, which is, they use
Right.
for climbing, for
Right.
oxygen deprivation stuff, and some other diuretics. And I was on those for, well, that was in 1998. So for about 10 years, I was on those medications, and I fought with that, having to go in approximately every 6 months for spinal
Wow.
taps.
Well, and then you tell me that the other time you had some problems with some clotting issues.
It's a little problem.
Yeah, more than a little problem. Tell us what happened.
In 2008, May of 2008, around Memorial Day weekend, right before the weekend, I began having some lower right abdomen pain, which I attributed to kidney stones or kidney infection, which I've had off and on most of my adult life. And I went in for ultrasound, nothing showed up. Weekend went on, pain got worse and worse and worse. I told Patty Joe, we got to go to the hospital. I can't. Pain is too bad. I figured it was a kidney stone that just couldn't work its way out. We went to the hospital. They did a CT scan. A number of specialists were looking at the scan,
Trying to figure out what's
shaking their
going on.
heads.
What's going on?
Trying to figure out what's going on here. They had absolutely no idea. They admitted me. Eventually, the doctors came in and told me that I was clotted. And my first thought was, oh, I got a little clot, no big deal, right? Well, it was my inferior vena cava was completely solid from my groin to around my liver.
Oh my, that's amazing. And you're talking about not some partial, but it's clotted up.
Completely.
Yeah.
No blood could get through. So the organs, my organs were beginning to shut down. My kidneys, I think I was down to 25% function.
Wow. So what was the church doing at this point?
Our church got together and they had a sign-up sheet, and everybody signed up to pray for him for complete healing. People would
For
sign up
complete healing.
for complete healing,
Yes.
and they would sign up for midnight to 1. Somebody else would sign up from 1 a.m. to 2 a.m.
Around the clock.
Around the clock, and there would be 1 or 2 people for each time slot. So, and I was praying the whole time that I was there too, but it was.
But he's not responding. He's getting worse. In fact, you were
Right.
telling me the pastor started asking some questions about.
He did. He was at his bedside and he was asking him his, favorite, hymns, Christian songs, basically
Scriptures.
planning his funeral.
They
They
things
had-
are down at the end. Things are winding
Right.
up, and yeah, I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing here, but I'd like to know what your favorite scriptures are, and yeah, trying to think about a memorial service or
Right.
a funeral service. So they're praying around the clock, and what are the doctors doing?
Well, we had an incredible vascular surgeon, one of the best in the country. He was actually one that did like the first robotic surgeries.
One of the early
He
pioneers.
is an awesome doctor. And he called the one person that he thought was even better to fly her out here for him, because nobody's ever seen anything like this. But she couldn't come.
Rare breed,
Yes.
Yes.
special.
But they tried to block the clot up, and they took him to the cath lab. They could not break the clot up at all. They
Just
couldn't.
wouldn't work.
No, they couldn't chip into it. They tried the same medications they use for strokes, things like that. It wouldn't dissolve. And so every 12 hours, they would take him back to the cath lab, and they'd take a look, and they'd come back and say, nothing.
Nothing.
We can't even get the catheter up there. That's how bad he was. And so they only had like one last shot at it. And so then the doctor comes back, and they wheeled him back from the cath lab, and the doctor's running off to another surgery, and he pulls the curtain back and says, he's 60% unclotted.
60%.
And I was ecstatic. And so I ran after the doctor, and I said, thank you for saving my husband's life. And he turns around and looks at me and says, it wasn't me, and points up.
He
And
points up. He
knew that it was not him. This was like cement. And his organs were shutting down, and we thought that was it for him.
So God dramatically intervened. People praying together. God is able to do that and answer to prayer, that which he could not do otherwise. So I would imagine that the pastor used you as an illustration there. In fact,
A number of times, yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, you've told me sometimes you'll point out to him, what would he say?
Walking dead man.
Walking dead man.
Yeah, he is.
Right out there. There's an answer to prayer.
He is.
Yeah.
And
So they never did really find out what caused the problem, did they?
No.
But now, ever since then, what's happened? Are you all right? Any other further problems along that line?
No, I am on blood thinners,
Okay.
just as a precaution.
Sure.
I guess, that's what they do when that
Yeah,
happens.
oh no,
So,
that's kind of a preventative thing.
exactly. So
Precautionary.
aside from that,
his kidney function is at 100%.
my kidney function, they never expected it to go back above 50%.
That is amazing.
So-
God is good. Well, when God does something, he does it, and he does it right, and does it the right way. However, that wasn't the end of your health challenges.
No.
You found out that you were finally diagnosed with prostate cancer.
I did. I began to think that God keeps trying to get my attention for some reason.
Now I'm beginning to believe that myself, and Patty Jo must have been
Yes.
thinking the same thing.
Just prior to my 50th birthday, I was into my family doctor, and I was having physical.
Normal physical.
50 years old. It was
Sure.
time, And so she did some blood tests. And now, of course, at this time, I was 235 pounds. My cholesterol was very high,
Pretty high.
over 300. My good cholesterol was way dangerously low. And that kind of scared me. In addition, my PSA level was elevated. And we decided to give that a little bit of time, see if maybe it was,
Sure.
prostatitis or something like that. Well, meanwhile, I began a running program and changed my diet.
Finally listened
I
to
finally listened to my wife,
Patty Jo. Yeah,
cut out
maybe-
my meats.
Maybe there's
cut
something
out-
there. So you
Yep.
begin eliminating things.
I did, same as she did. And I had stomach issues too, only I used over the counter. I was able to cut those out. Acid reflux went away with the
Amazing.
change in diet. By the time we did the second PSA test, my cholesterol was around
128.
120 something.
Over 300.
is
And
amazing.
in addition, my good cholesterol, which in my entire life that they've been checking it, I've never been able to get up into healthy levels, was well up.
Oh, that
Into
is
healthy
amazing. So you're making these healthy changes.
I am.
And you were and you are.
And I
okay?
lost weight as well.
And you lost weight as well. But they still found out that you had prostate cancer.
Unfortunately, the numbers kept going up.
Right.
So I went to the urologist. He did his own PSA test.
Sure. Kind of
Ev-
confirmed it.
confirming, exactly. Eventually, we did biopsy, which he wanted to do on my 50th birthday.
Right.
There's a good birthday present. We did do it. It came back positive. He
So you're
called me.
actually scheduled for surgery.
Scheduled surgery for
You
July
knew
16th.
about some of the side effects, but it looked like surgery
Correct.
was the way to go. So who's doing the research here? Patty
My
Jo.
wonderful wife.
Right.
Yeah, she's
And
tireless when it
somehow
comes to
you heard
researching.
about proton therapy.
I did. And when I was doing the research, I had looked at all the side effects from the regular radiation, the surgery. He's young, he rides a motorcycle.
Right.
And I'm thinking, he doesn't want to be leaking every time he hits a bump,
Right.
on the bike, things like that. And then I found they had different blogs and different people put their stories on the internet. I found a fan club
A fan club. I've
A
never heard
fan
this story
club.
before.
of the men that had proton therapy.
Brotherhood of the Balloon.
And it was amazing to read their stories and minimal side effects or no side effects. Terry's had no side effects whatsoever from this.
Absolutely
And
amazing.
yeah,
Well, I noticed you got a Brotherhood of the Balloon shirt
I
on.
do.
And in addition to that, Terry, you're the only one I know that went to the trouble, actually, before you came here.
Before I
Show
came
us
out,
what you
that's
did.
correct. As soon as I found out that I was going to come out for treatment,
When you came, you were.
I said, I need to mark this. I was so happy.
It's a turning
about it.
point in your
It was
life.
a turning point in my life. So I went out and did the logo for Brotherhood of the Balloon.
Brotherhood of the Balloon. Okay.
Got my cancer ribbons as well.
Right. So you did that before I actually got here.
Before-
We gave you the shirt when you came.
Yes, yes.
Right.
Once I found out that I was accepted into the program. We went home.
So when you came and you were undergoing treatment, were you sick during that time?
I was not. I felt wonderful. I was exercising, playing racquetball, as you well know. Patty and I played a lot of table tennis. I was golfing at least once, if not 2 or 3 times a week.
Right.
The Drayson Center.
Spent a lot of time at the Drayson Center. Wonderful, wonderful place. It's just the whole body healing thing.
And you were keeping pretty actively involved during this whole period of time. Well, we've got a lot of people that are looking on, and I'd like to, people, sometime this week, some people just find out that they've got cancer. It may not be prostate cancer, but it's some other kind of cancer, and it's kind of devastating news to them. What would you tell them? Look into the camera and just talk to them.
Well, number one is prayer. God is your father. Much like we as parents like to do things for our kids, he likes to do things for us. So that's number one. You just can't make it through something like this without that, without God by your side. I don't know how people do it, and I would never recommend that. Second is to find some place that you're comfortable with, some place that treats the whole body. Loma Linda, perfect example. You want somebody that treats you as a person, not as a patient, not as a disease. Those are key things. Get involved in groups that support one another for the cancer. Those are the biggest things that I can come up with. And quite frankly, Loma Linda is the place to go. If Patty Joe ever had an issue, this is where we'd be.
So tell us about the experience you had while you were here.
Oh, it was awesome. We did the Tuesday night potlucks.
Okay.
The Wednesday night educational classes were, I think, the highlight of the week for me because I like to learn and study all the nutrition things. And they brought in incredible speakers for that. That was great, and they fed us dinner.
Yeah, for our listening audience, we have a whole curriculum of different speakers every Wednesday night, and we expect, the patients with their spouses to be there because it's a part of the healing process. Okay.
Yeah, it was awesome. Then we did the Thursday night restaurant tours where we got to meet lots of great couples there. And he did the golf every Wednesday morning with all the men. So there's so many things.
A wide variety. People call it a radiation vacation.
Absolutely.
It
was. It was.
And for many of them, it's a turning point in their life. Yeah. So what would you tell anybody that's been diagnosed? And you've had all kinds of challenges, but you do a lot of reading on your own.
Do a lot of research. We got the second opinions, everything like that. But this is incredible here, what you guys have here.
You made some amazing discoveries on your own about the importance of diet and nutrition. So what would you say?
Learn about nutrition, eat healthy, cut out the meats. You don't need them. I still do a little bit, but I'm getting there. But it's one step at a time.
You're right.
If it's
very important point.
Increase your vegetables.
It's a gradual,
start with that.
Right. You got to the point where you are now, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, whatever it might have been, and you can't just automatically drop everything. It's a kind of a gradual, but moving toward better choices.
One step at a time.
Lifestyle
exactly.
choices. Making choices. So now, tell me about the church that you were involved with here now. What were they doing during this whole period of time? It seemed like you've been one series after another.
They're always praying for me. We have our church is part of the Evangelical Free Church of America.
And they believe in prayer.
They believe in prayer, absolutely. And we have a men's group, and they pray for me, and I keep in contact with them. Even when we were out here, I'm part of our worship team, and so they're like a small group, and they pray for me. The prayer's constant, and you can't get through life without it.
Yeah, God is able to do that in answer to prayer, that which He could not do if we had not prayed. And again, you're both a living testimony of what happens when a church rallies together, and it does something for the church. When, all of a sudden, hey, did you hear about Terry? And the word passes on. No, I can't believe that. And you're indicating even the doctors couldn't believe the changes, and they can't take the credit for what happens. That's an amazing story. So now that you've had cancer, and you also had another kind of cancer,
I did.
and what was that?
I had melanoma.
You had a melanoma.
Yes.
Now, was that before you got the prostate cancer?
That was before.
7 months
I
before.
had melanoma 7 months before. I had a large piece of my side taken out,
Okay.
all the way to the muscle.
So that's a couple years ago. You haven't had any further problems.
Not at this point.
Okay. God is good. He's not through with you yet. Now, I
Doesn't
don't know
seem
why
like
you
it.
keep having one thing after another that keeps coming back, but God's not through with you yet. And it's exciting to wait and trust and see where he goes and what he leads. Now, I know you're living in Arizona. You talked
Yes.
about wanting to move eventually over to the East Coast.
That's
And
correct.
you're talking about down in the Carolina area. And a couple more years, you might be able to retire from the work that you're in and be able to move out that way. Now, you've got families scattered, apparently,
We do.
California and Arizona.
California,
Arizona.
and
But you
Connecticut.
got a brother, if I heard correctly, up in the Connecticut area that might be moving down
Yes.
to Carolina.
Yeah.
Well, I know that God wants to use you wherever you are, whether it's in Arizona, whether you're back here in California, wherever you are. He wants to use you as a testimony of what
Right.
he can do through a person's life who's committed to him. And again, for our listening audience, there are people this week, I know that you've just been given some devastating news. You found out you got some kind of cancer, and it's rare. 1 in a million or 1 in 100,000. And I got news for you. God's got a plan for your life. But like Terry and Patty Joe, you've got to open up and say, Lord, what do you have planned for me? Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do? I'm here for you. And those of you that have just been diagnosed, the second thing I'd tell you to do, in addition to what he's told you, is get a second opinion. When you find in the words you have cancer, it's a diagnosis. It's not a death sentence. God's got a plan. He's got a plan for each one of our lives. And many times we try to go out on our own and try to go in our own different ways. But if we'll listen to him and to that small voice saying, this is the way, walk ye in it. He has a plan for you, and he'll take you. Give him a chance. Just right now, listen to him.